Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Modern Investing on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Starr, and our guest today is Jim Eat from Eat Foundation. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you for having me, Sasha. Great to be here.
Yes, especially when the market is doing so well.
Green on your screen. Yes.
Yeah, it's green and it's actually I'm concentrated in the last couple of weeks on two stocks. It's first of all Nvidia, and second is Oracle.
Yes.
Both stocks are doing extremely well today, and I'm using the system of it's like a pyramid system. So the more stock is moving up, it allows me to buy even more shares. So 2 weeks ago, I had zero shares of NVIDIA and zero shares of Oracle. Today, I have 500 shares of NVIDIA and 500 shares of Oracle. And I'm selling covered calls from time to time and moving up the exercise price. And so right now I'm extremely pleased with
Yeah.
both, and both have pretty soon earnings report. The Nvidia on 26th of August, and Oracle beginning of September. I forgot which date is that. So I'm expecting, based on report of Taiwan Semiconductors, I'm expecting Nvidia to do not just well, but extremely well. And we'll see if I'm right or not, but that's what I think about it. What about you, Jim?
Well, I have bought and sold NVIDIA many times now. When it's been up, I've been selling it. And when it comes back down, I've been buying it. But right now, my feeling has been my plan has been to invest in the companies that provide the infrastructure for these AI companies. We started out investing in the semiconductor chip making companies like Taiwan Semiconductor. Um, and these are the types of things that were supporting the AI growth. And now they're trying to get to how do I use AI? And to use AI, they need these data centers. And these data centers is everybody says not in my backyard, but they're going to be built somewhere. And they need a lot of copper. They need a lot of infrastructure that in order to establish the connectivity that will make AI more prevalent in our society. And it's going to happen. There's too much money behind it. And so the two companies that I have invested in most recently are APH and EME, and they're both doing well today.
Yeah.
But I think in the long term, their prospects are good because as we've been talking about over the weeks, Sasha, who knows what's going to happen. The environment right now is very chaotic and very there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of fear. But there's also the greed factor. People are still, and there's money to be made, even in a market like this, where we have an unpredictable president going to do something tomorrow that he didn't do yesterday, and we have no way of knowing what that is. What he might do in October before the November elections, who knows? So the markets are going to react. Markets are going to come up and down. Energy prices, for example, have been going up and down, up and down. And are we going to send more missiles into Iran? Are we going to not? And there's a ceasefire, and then there isn't. And we just don't. In this kind of environment, it's very difficult to invest. It's very difficult to plan for the future. But I see that the AI data centers are going to be built, and the companies that are positioned to support that are going to do well.
Agree with you, Jim. And about Trump's unpredictability, in fact, in last few days, he's becoming very predictable.
Uh-huh.
What happened is that he cannot finish his war with Iran. That raises several new questions, especially
I
when
agree.
Pentagon asking for extra $500 billion, and because uh, US cannot put their foot on the ground to finish the operation because, of course, the factors of human losses in this situation, and he cannot afford it. So then, bombardment from the air, they have very limited effect, if any. And in the meantime, Iran has a lot of way to hurt the United States and its friends in the Gulf very, very substantially. So Trump is, speaking about Pentagon number one, if you have trillion and a half expenditure on an army that cannot win any war in the last 50 some years, whether it's Vietnam, Iraq, Iran, the Afghanistan, Iran now, or so on.
Korea.
All American taxpayers are benefiting from this colossal expenditures. It's it's just another way of. In the meantime, of course, the Pentagon has a luxurious life. They're ordering thousands of steak and lobster dinners and others. And now, what came to my attention is one of the reasons that they don't provide license to Ukraine to produce the interceptors for Patriot missile is actually that Ukrainians will figure out very quickly how to make these interceptors better and much cheaper than Pentagon does. So that uh, tells me a very interesting story that the budget of trillion and a half, it's a complete nonsense. It's basically taking money from the people and provided it to Pentagon without any accountability. Because if you have budget of trillion and a half and you cannot finish the war in Iran, who needs this type of army? Who needs this expenditure of trillion and a half dollars? How American people can benefit from it? This is question number one. Number two, Trump needs some kind of positive news, especially with the upcoming election. So the only one positive news he can still manufacture is manipulation of the stock market, which we are frankly benefiting a lot. So
Right.
if there are no positive news other than pump up the stock market, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Do it. Continue to do just that. I think it's fantastic news. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I think it's bad for the country. Again, there's a disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street.
Yes.
These
Absolutely.
giant companies are doing well, and the wealthy are getting even wealthier. But the Main Street is feeling the pinch at the gas pumps and in the grocery stores. And this is what everyday people need to open their eyes and see that this disastrous war of choice has been so costly. And who would the costs eventually get passed on to? It's the American citizens, consumers. And we pay the prices. We pay more for the everyday things. And so it's not a direct tax, but it is an indirect tax on, and it's hurting the people who don't have disposable income. They don't have a lot of savings. They don't have a lot of the month to month is kind of a difficult thing for them to accomplish as it is. So when prices are going up, it hurts. And so take it out at the voting polls and throw these bums out. Because this war of choice, which was basically Netanyahu has been pitching presidents for a long time of the same thing, regime change in Iran. And Trump was the first president who bought it and tried it. He's also kidnapped the president of another foreign country, but, he did assassinate this one. But he was assassinated an extremist who was cautious. And he's been replaced not by the people's choice, but by an extremist who is less cautious, more willing to take action. And in the action, people, American army bases are suffering the consequences, but so are some of the other Arabic countries in the sphere of influence there. And the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, or that if it'll be opened, maybe Iran will be able to tax those who pass through it. So this is all in all been disastrous, and this is the type of decision making that we need to have better people. And the people who cautioned him got fired, transferred. And he was replaced by people who just are yes men and yes women, and they sing his praises to his face. And these are the types of people who may not be competent at all in these jobs that are very, very important. So some of the companies that I've been talking about will survive whatever happens. And yes, people will make profits in the market, even under these conditions. But overall, this is a terrible waste of taxpayers' dollars. And hopefully, the Army and the armed forces will be smart enough to invest it in how you fight wars today. It's not with boots on the ground, but it's with anti-ballistic missiles, it's with drones, and it's a different type of warfare. And I don't know if Trump knows this, and I don't know if the people around him know it, because all the people who do know it have been fired.
See, James, the problem is with Pentagon is that they are still thinking in terms of war of 20th century. They don't learn at all from Ukraine. What Ukraine is doing now is not only the use of drones, it's also use of robots on the battlefield. The drones are bringing real robots with incredible firing systems, and you cannot fight against these robots. They're just killing absolutely everything.
Human beings can't, right.
And they're not very expensive, by the way. But you see, I think Pentagon is more interested in a very expensive weapons, because that's where everybody is making a lot of money. So it's not a question of equip army with a vision and weapons of the 21st century war. No, they want to do the 20th century war, provide all the expensive weapons and making a lot of money. Now, about the economic data, I found that a lot of the information is very misleading. So, for example, in one of our programs, so there is a lot of talk about growing GDP and all that stuff. Jim, tell me one thing. When the credit cards are charging 22% interest and late charges on poor people who cannot pay on time, is that part of GDP or not?
No, it's not.
It's not part of GDP, no?
Well, it very well may be part of the calculations, because what will be reflected in is those companies that are charging these usury type of prices, they will report good earnings. And
so is that part of GDP then?
Yes, in that sense it is, yes.
Wonderful. So basically, American people are missing one thing, that their standard of living is going down, even middle class. Right. It's going down. They are not trying to think about it. Why is that happening? Why they cannot live better than they do? What do you think, Jim? Why is it happening?
Well, I think one of the things that we saw was a hard shift to the hard right. And we saw it throughout Europe as well. And this idea of nationalism, where the U.S. is in it alone. Trump hits this theme quite a bit, and, he declares a war of choice and then looks around and says, where are my allies? You get the allies to support you before you take action. And this, every military leader knows this. And so this is, again, incompetency in plain sight. And I hope the U.S. citizens wake up and when they go to the polls, go to the vote. And these are the types of things that, we run into this kind of incompetency quite a bit. And one of the things is Trump believes there's no accountability. And hopefully people will show up at the polls and show some accountability to him, by routing these MAGA supporters. And these MAGA supporters, their numbers are dwindling. Yeah.
Jim, I totally agree with you. But there is another factor, probably even more important, is a very serious inequality between what average worker, even in high tech, making versus payments to CEO or president of the company. In countries like Sweden, the ratio is normally 7-1, maybe 9-1 in some cases. In some European countries, it could be even 20-1. In the United States, it's 150-1 and 200-1, or just name it. Let's see if somebody making $100,000 a year, or even $200,000 a year, which is not bad salary. But if the president of that company is making $25 million,
Right.
so this 200,000 is nothing in comparison to what is doing CEO. And what CEO or president is making such a wonderful thing that allows him to take home this type of salary? Not at all nothing. But the problem also is that these people are not paying their fair share of taxes.
Of course, if you're
They
wealthy
are
enough,
all
you hire enough
surrounded
lawyers.
themselves with the tax accountants and tax lawyers and tax specialists. So they are avoiding or trying to optimize, let's put it nicely, their payment of taxes. So there is no use for these CEOs and presidents. They're sucking from the companies that they conduct, and they're not paying their fair taxes.
I agree with you completely. The income inequality is one of the biggest challenges that faces the country of the United States today. And the income inequality, there's no problem with me if you believe in capitalism. But capitalism, runaway capitalism, has these kinds of negative effects. It can result in monopolies. And remember, Teddy Roosevelt, a long time ago, ran on busting the trusts, which is another word for monopolies. And so these monopolies will form. And also this type of the problem that you say is where the wealth is bubbling up and stays. And so the wealthy are getting wealthier, and the middle class are hanging on by their fingernails, and the poor are just getting more and more desperate. These types of consequences are consequences of unregulated capitalism. And Trump has also fired all the people that were part of the regulatory system. And people would, starting with Reagan, it was anti-regulations. And regulations, we can be misregulated. We can be regulated crazily. And in some cases we were, and there was justice and behind the thoughts of scrap this regulation, it no longer serves. But the idea that the capitalism can go on unchecked is folly. And history has taught us that. There have to be people in place, watchdogs. There have to be people in place that will, and we have insider trader at the highest levels. We see, people placing billion-dollar bets.
It's highly immoral system which allows the president to make money of the presidency as much
no one
as
has monopolized
never made in his life.
No one has monopolized the presidency the way Trump has. No Democrat, no Republican, no one in history.
Trump is, if you'll take his business career, he's a pathological loser. He lost anything and everything whenever he started in his life, except now when he is in cahoot with all the tech brothers and with the people like Peter Thiel, who is now actually in Argentina. I think Peter Thiel probably feels what's going to happen when people will start to understand this material inequality and will demand a change. And it will happen as soon as Democrats will get control of the House and possibly Senate as well. So he is already in Argentina. It's interesting where Trump is going to travel in near future, but this is unavoidable. And what I'm talking about is nothing new in it. It's all been described by people like Karl Marx and the like. So this is it was true 200 years ago. It's just true today. Nothing's changed, except that today the level of inequality, the level of immoral insider trading and immoral persecution of American people through ICE armies and so on is just becoming unbearable, really.
Yes, and I don't notice the outrage of some of the things like ICE killing people that are natural citizens, and or the wanton abuse. Why do they wear masks? Why don't they have body cameras? All of these types of things, and they don't go through the training that your regular policeman does. And these people aren't vetted for, do they have psychological issues? Are they violent prone? They just aren't untrained, and their backgrounds are unchecked to an alarming degree. So these types of things should not be tolerated. And people think of the United States as a capitalist society, and that's misnamed. It's a democratic society that uses capitalism as its economic system. And in a democracy, it's up to the United States citizen to perform their civic duty of voting. And the only power you really have is to show up and vote and throw these bums out.
Absolutely, I agree. But the capitalistic system is not that bad by itself. If you'll take Sweden, it's a capitalistic system by all means, but they don't have that type of actions what the ICE is taking in the United States. They don't have such a material inequality as exists in the United States, and growing, by the way. It just keeps growing and growing. This is almost like metastasis on body of the United States of America. And I think it just takes a little time, but it will happen that the Democrats, by the way, I was listening to one of the interviews with El Said on Sunday, and he said that the first thing what Democrats will do once in power, they will start investigation and impeachment of Donald Trump and a few others as well. Now, people were saying, well, even if they will impeach him, he will be not have any consequences because of Senate and so on. But it's not important the result, important the process. Important is to bring these people with
Accountability.
subpoenas to accountability. That's what's important. And whether we will
but I
be
think
needed by Senate, I'm not sure.
Sasha and Jim, I just popped in because I brought it up on the news show, but I think you had disappeared and everything like that because it was beginning to be you preparing for this show. But I don't know if y'all saw this, but the Trump administration, through the FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, has actually said that U.S. companies and individuals don't have to report their business ownership. So that's something else that just came out. I think it was earlier today. So they don't really have to say whether Trump is owning something or not, or anybody is. So that's a way for them to duck accountability, to your point and everything, because the foreign companies will have to report, but the U.S. companies, they can be owned by shadow companies or they can be owned by whoever, and they don't have to report this. So I don't know if you saw that, Jim, or if you paid any attention to that, but that just came down, I think, earlier today or yesterday.
So is this already been implemented as a law, or is it just discussion?
No, it's already being implemented as a law. They finalized a rule exempting U.S. companies and individuals from reporting beneficial ownership information to the Treasury Department's Financial Crime Unit. So they just recently enacted this law now. But the foreign companies, they say, will still require foreign reporting companies to disclose beneficial ownership information. So they'll have to tell who their owners are if they're coming either from Canada or from Mexico. But anybody in the U.S., they don't even have to tell you who their owners are.
Yeah, that's appalling, but predictable, and I don't think that will stand the test of time. One of the things that for finances for companies is transparency, and there is none. It's getting worse. It's not none, but it's very controlled, and so it used to be a white collar crime to hide your financial relationships, and we have to get back to those days where people are not as forthcoming about what their business dealings is, because it infects the investor. And these are the types of things that the investor needs to know to make wise decisions. And we were talking about robotics earlier. There's another company I want to mention. Its ticker tape is SIM, SYM. And
Yes.
and I think it has been kind of not doing much, but I think it's going to go up, not substantially, but maybe in the range of like 10% or something like that pretty soon, because it's done some acquisitions and it's really consolidating. It's going to be providing some, again, I kind of think of it as hardware, but it's robotics and, doing things that, we're going to make things less costly for businesses. And that's part of the AI boom. And, maybe it'll cost jobs and it'll hurt people in that way. But it's from an investor's point of view, strictly from an investing point of view, it's one of those companies. It's in the infrastructure arena that I talked about earlier.
So the problem for today's economy in the United States is that there will be a lot of jobs lost thanks to AI. And this is historically a normal process. Remember the 19th century England, where a lot of jobs were lost through industrialization process. So that's a normal thing. The problem is that the new jobs are not coming in the United States, and all these promises of $17 trillion investments in U.S., it's not materializing at all. Nothing is really happening.
Right.
So I really don't know how U.S. is going to mitigate it all. The only thing is that what will happen is in midterm elections, the Democrats will come to power, and so the Republicans will then provide all these problems on the Democrats and say, okay, you want the power, here is your power, let's see what you're going to do.
Right. Yeah. These are interesting times, as the Chinese curse would tell you.
Jim, thank you so much for today's program. We will continue next Wednesday, same place, same time. In the meantime, good luck in your trading.
Green on your screen. Thank you, Sasha. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.